Hey guys, my name is Miles and you're watching Miles Per Hour. Recently, I went on a trip to Los Angeles from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I wanted to share with you guys my findings on the Performance Model 3's efficiency on that sort of long drive and kind of talk about the supercharging stops, how I liked them, how fast I charged, how many times I had to stop, and what kind of range I got in real world situations going upwards of 80 miles per hour and traveling with the AC on and basically not driving 55 in the slow lane, drafting a semi like what some people may be doing with their Model 3s. So I started my drive from the San Bruno area, which is about 20 miles or so south of San Francisco, and I initially went with Tesla's navigation. So I entered my final address and had Tesla navigating me to my final destination. But I quickly realized that Tesla didn't accurately depict my traffic. So they were routing me across toll bridges that are known to have hour delays just to get, 9 miles across a bridge. So I quickly realized that you shouldn't really trust the Tesla navigation to navigate you in a accurate and quick manner to your final destination. My first supercharger stop was about 94 miles in at Hollister, California. Now, I stopped here not because my vehicle had to stop, but actually it's what I would like to call a driver stop. Just had to use the restroom, gather some food. And so I stopped for about 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes, I got 17 miles of range, and I was charging at about 214 miles an hour. Now, the reason the charge was so slow was because my vehicle had a higher state of charge, and Tesla, just like all other electric car manufacturers, slows down or tapers the charging speed when you're at a higher state so that you protect the batteries. If you think about it, if you have like an empty sink that you want to fill with water, you're going to start off and you can fill it very quickly, but towards the end, you're going to want to slow down the faucet so that you can actually not spill and go over. Over the course of my first 94 miles, I averaged 257 watt hours a mile, which is pretty good. Now, to get the advertised 310 miles of range, you need to have about 241 watt hours a mile, so I'm a little bit above that. But considering I was driving upwards of 80 miles per hour with the AC on, I'd say that that's some pretty good efficiency. I then continued on to Kettleman City, which is a bit of an infamous supercharger right now because it's actually the only lounge that Tesla offers. And by lounge, I mean that when you get to Kettleman City, you enter a key code which shows up on your Tesla to get access to a building, and within that building they have a lot of nice amenities such as a cafe with a barista. They have games available upon request, they have snacks available for sale, private restrooms, a business lounge, and a bunch of cool Tesla features like TV monitors all around that show you other people charging and other superchargers in different countries, the amount of emissions that Tesla has saved. And overall, it's a pretty excellent stop. I actually picked up some apparel there as well. Got 2 Tesla t-shirts and a latte. So from the last supercharger stop, I had gone 122 miles and used 290 watt hours a mile, which is a pretty significant increase of our previous 257 watt hours a mile that we used over the original 94 miles. And, bear in mind, this was going 75 miles per hour with the AC set to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And at this point now, I've driven 221 miles all in, and I'm averaging 275 watt hours a mile. When I first pulled into Kettleman City, I had 67 miles of range left. And one thing to note about the Model 3 charging and really all electric vehicle charging is that you want to start charging with the lowest state of charge possible. Similar to that sink analogy that I used earlier, the Model 3 can actually fill at 120 kilowatt hours, which is the full charge speed, which equates to, for some people, about 450 miles an hour for the first 40%. So if your battery is empty, you can go from 0 to 40% at 120 kilowatts an hour. And from that point on, it tapers down to actually protect the battery. So you want to try and plan your stops where you're arriving with a low state of charge. And in this case, I was arriving at Kettleman City with about 14 or 15%. I charged there for 15 minutes and I went from 67 miles of range to 171. At this point, I could have continued on to my final destination, but I chose to go 91 miles to Tejon Ranch, which is actually at the base of the Grapevine. And I did this because I knew that the Grapevine was going to use a larger amount of energy than Tesla predicted. And I also wanted to arrive in Los Angeles with a usable state of charge that I could go about and do my, touristy things, driving to the aquarium, doing all that fun stuff. At this point on, I drove 80 miles per hour the rest of the way. I was using autopilot, and autopilot performed better than I thought it would. And to be completely honest, it was able to drive in situations with construction cones where there were no lane lines at all. Now, I do not recommend using autopilot in this way. It's not meant to be used in this manner. You should always use autopilot with clearly defined lines. But I also would like to point out that it still performed flawlessly in this situation, but you should still be more alert if you are going to be pushing autopilots to its limit. 91 miles later at Tejon Ranch, I had used 328 watt-hours a mile, which is an exceptionally large amount of energy, but please also keep in mind that I was going 80 miles per hour and had the AC set between 70 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point now, I had driven 312 miles total, so if I was doing 55 miles per hour, I had the AC off, I would be able to almost get to Tejon Ranch with the Model 3's EPA estimated range. Tejon Ranch was also a great supercharger stop. I'd recommend it for anyone going between Los Angeles and San Francisco, or San Francisco to Los Angeles. There's a ton of food options. It's a great place to wait. I went and got Chipotle, sat down, had my dinner, and by the time I got back to my car, I was ready to proceed to my final destination. I charged for a total of about 30 minutes and gathered 193 miles of range in that time, which brought me to 253 miles of total range. It was at this point I continued on and I went up the Grapevine. My first 8 miles on the Grapevine, I was averaging about 689 watt-hours a mile. Now, if you remember, to get the EPA estimated 310 miles of range, you need to be averaging about 241 watt-hours a mile. So I was, almost triple that going up the Grapevine, which is why I said Tejon Ranch is a great place to stop and get some extra juice before attempting to go all the way up this like 5,000 foot elevation change. At the end of the Grapevine, which is about 57 miles long, I had averaged 305 watt-hours a mile. I ended my trip near Wilshire Boulevard, which was about 390 miles from my starting destination. And at that point, I had used 289 watt-hours a mile on average, which I'd say is pretty good for someone who wasn't babying the car. Keep in mind, I'm driving this like a real person should. I'm not treating it like some electric car that I have to go in the slow lane and draft trucks. I'm driving it as I would any other vehicle. I did have a total of 3 supercharger stops. Out of those 3 though, remember the first one was because I wanted to stop. I would say that only 2 of those were actually necessary to safely get from San Francisco to Los Angeles and arrive in Los Angeles with a state of charge that was usable. I was able to get there with over 150 miles of range. One other thing that I'd like to touch on is the cost of charging. So I have a Performance Model 3, and since I ordered my vehicle before August 1st, I am eligible for free supercharging for life. So my total cost personally was $0, but for those people that may be ordering their Model 3 either long range or all-wheel drive or performance without a referral code, the total cost would have been about $29 to supercharge, because California is the most expensive state actually to supercharge in. It's 26 cents a kilowatt hour, and I used 113 kilowatt hours. Comparing this to a gas vehicle, which gets about 30 miles per gallon, you would have spent about $46 in gas. So we're saving about $16.60 over an average gas vehicle. Now that is math that is using the average fuel price in California, which is about $3.54 a gallon. If your car uses premium fuel, then that savings is going to be even greater. But one thing to mention is that most of the gas stops that I noticed actually in the middle of California were charging $4.30 for 87. So assuming you started with a full tank and then you had to stop once to get gas, you would have actually paid $56 in gas, meaning you would have saved $26 driving the Tesla if you had to pay for supercharging. So overall, it was a pleasant drive. I calculated that I only spent about an extra 30 to 35 minutes charging over what I would with a gasoline vehicle. So it was actually pretty nice. Every time I've made that trip in the past in a gasoline vehicle, I've rushed through. I've wanted to get there as quick as possible. I made my stops 5 minutes long. But I'd say that actually my Tesla, having to slow me down a little bit to charge, was nice. When I got to LA, I felt a lot more energized than I did any other time making that drive, and it was an overall very pleasant experience. One of the reasons I was actually driving down to Los Angeles was to film a video with Vehicle Virgins. I'll link that in the description. He actually compared the Performance Model 3 to the BMW M3, so let you guys check that out. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and also leave some suggestions for videos in the comments. I read through all of my comments. I love replying to you guys, and I want to make content that you guys want to see. There goes my baby with Vehicle Virgins and Salamandrin.